Welcome to the Startup Pitch Anatomy session here at the 7th Annual CanCham Transpacific Virtual Conference 2021. We can't be in person like we were last year, but I feel like this is a good time to kind of take a look at how people are investing in startups today, what they're looking for, how Zoom has changed a lot of the pitching techniques. And I have three amazing investors from Silicon Valley, from Hong Kong, and from Canada to talk about a little bit of what they look for when they're looking at pitch decks for the very first time. So I'd like to have them introduce themselves so they can learn a little bit more of what they do. First, let's start with Edith Yeung from RaceCapital. Edith, how are you doing?
Hi, everyone. Hello from San Francisco. Doing okay, stuck at home, but it's a perfect time to look at pitches when you're at home.
Do you think it's more easy for people to reach out to you these days?
That's a great question, actually. Since the shutdown in San Francisco for the last year, my team and I actually talked to over 400, did 400 pitch over Zoom.
Wow. And
usually in half an hour increments. And it's amazing, like in the past, you have to arrange meeting, you have to find parking, and arrange face-to-face meetings. And now we can literally see 10 pitches a day if we want to. So
do you think, is that a lot more than usual than when you're in an office?
It's a lot more. Literally, like I wake up from 9 to 5, I'm talking to founders all the time. So in some sense, even though, we're all really frustrated, like stay-at-home order, but the reality is that, thanks to the US stock market, looking at like Snowflake, Airbnb, DoorDash, I think in many ways it's a really great sign, because when you're stuck at home, the only way for you to get food, to continue to run your business is through the support of technology. So at the beginning of last year, we thought that this is going to be another financial crisis and valuation may come down. But the reality is completely the opposite. I think, thanks to COVID, one thing for sure, 2020, the pandemic year, accelerate the use of technology on all sides. So funding have not gone down. In fact, I felt like there's even more funding going to startups, and valuation is still very expensive. And in some sense, thanks to Zoom, we all seriously, I live on Zoom all day long. So a lot of activity going on in terms of.
Sorry, you're on it again right now.
Yeah.
Even off hours, you're still on it. So two questions to follow up on that quickly. Are you looking at deals more internationally or still more based in the US? And then what kind of check sizes are you writing over Zoom?
Yeah, so we've actually been quite active. We have written checks and invested in companies that I have not met the founder in person. We're very focused on early to Series A, very focused on enterprise, data infrastructure, machine learning. And our check size, I would say, average, 1 to 3 million. But we usually prefer to lead and at least 10 to 20% in terms of equity ownership. So therefore, it's really driven by, the market and yeah, that's why I'm saying like it's still very, very expensive. And then in terms of geography, I think the definition of sort of US and North America is we started tracking 6 months ago, distributed team, yes or no. We could be talking to a Silicon Valley company, but the reality is they literally are everywhere. There is definitely a Silicon Valley exodus these days. I have quite a few founders actually have escaped to Vancouver and escaped to Toronto. And because of that, I think that the definition of international or even North American startup these days, that definition is getting more vague. So we're very open internationally. I think it's the best time for international founder to reach out to US investor. Guess what? All of us, Roland, Pieter, and I are all at home. So, in some sense, it doesn't really matter where you're at anymore. We want to keep our minds open as much as we can.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, Pieter, tell us a little bit about Angel Forum and eFund that you run here in Vancouver.
Yeah, so Angel Forum is really a network of about 40, 50 angel investors. At our meetings, we have about 100 members, about 50 show up, and we do deals every month. So through Zoom, through the whole period, we've had monthly meetings where a few companies pitch. and that is followed up with investment discussions and closing rounds. So in parallel to that, I run a fund called Ethan. That's an angel fund, so where we pool sort of angel capital, and we got checks anywhere from 50K to 300K in the seed stage, mostly in Western Canada. That's our focus, and we do it across all industry sectors. So it's health tech, it's software. It's our most recent deal was an agri-tech deal, and we're pretty active. And like Edith was saying, the volume of new deals and the amount of checks are being written over the last 12 months was quite impressive. Actually, there's a lot of activity. There's a lot going on. And we're very excited, and we've made a number of very interesting investments of companies that are doing very well. And if I look at the portfolio of eFund, I see a lot of companies that have actually gotten a boost out of the COVID. Wasn't one company called it was an accelerant for their business. And we had a few companies that were struggling, but in one case where I was a personal investor, we did a down round and we helped recapitalize the company, and they're going to make it through the crisis. So I think tech overall has been doing quite well, and we're seeing that in most of our companies.
Since you invest in such early stage startups, do you see a lot of new companies launching within the last 6 to 12 months?
Oh yeah, tons, right? So a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon of, in particular in health tech, and coming up with solutions that relate to working from home or interfaces with the healthcare sector, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of them are sort of just not it's a hype a little bit. So I tend to be skeptical. We look at mostly at companies that came to fruition before the crisis happened, but I'm sure there will be interesting stuff coming out of this. I like to follow companies for a little while, right? Work with them and see what they're doing over 6 to 12 month period before we really dive into it. So we'll see. We'll see some good companies, but I think you have to be careful with a bit of over enthusiastic startups at the moment.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. And what's your connection to Hong Kong?
I lived in Hong Kong in the 90s for 7 years. I worked there for Barclays Bank and UBS, and I did project finance. And it's a bit of a joke because the biggest deal I worked on was $2.6 billion. That was Indonesia's first independent power project. And now I'm doing deals that are like $2 million, right? But I always say, the principles are the same, right? You get a group of people and investors together, and you're working together over a longer period of time to get to a successful financial return. So I learned a lot about finance in Hong Kong, and I have to say I really miss Hong Kong. I had a great time there.
Well, hopefully we'll have you back there soon. Roland, what do you do there at Cocoon Ignite Ventures?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Casey. And hello from Hong Kong. So Cocoon Ignite Ventures is an early stage venture capital fund, and we invest in early stage technologies. So far in our first fund, we had a general application or a general theme towards technologies. So we were early stage, but industry and geography agnostic. But interestingly, now that we're about halfway through this fund, we're seeing themes, patterns, and adaptations of business models, whether it's because of technologies or whether it's because of COVID. And so the interesting thing about being in the VC space now is actually for us, instead of focusing on new deals last year and this year, we've been looking at our existing portfolio, seeing how the founders are going through this, seeing how the models are fitting in these challenging times, which is actually helping us set up for Fund 2 and have a much clearer picture as to how that's going to look like.
Great. Is there any special Hong Kong companies you're looking at right now, and what kind of check sizes do you write for them?
So under the current fund, we're doing mostly follow-ons. So that typically goes up to $1 million. But for the second fund, in terms of capturing value and seeing how early stage investors can be helpful, we hope to be able to write anything up to $5 million, obviously based on our fund size. But really that, that ties into a bit to do with valuations, the amount of equity that we need for the right kind of governance and align the interest, so on and so forth. So that's just a ballpark range. But more specifically, out of Hong Kong, I think the next opportunity is servicing Asia from the city, as it's always done from a financial aspect. And specifically, what's been very interesting for us is the usual themes, but data around education, healthcare, and retail.
Very good, very good. Okay, great. So we're gonna. Let me introduce myself as well. Of course, I think most people know I'm Casey Lau. I started the StartupsGBA, and also I'm the co-host of the Rise conference. And I don't invest necessarily in startups like these people, but I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of pitches. I can't even imagine how many pitches I've seen. So that's why I'm actually very interested to see exactly what these three panelists will tell me. Maybe I don't know about how the investor will look and disseminate a pitch document. Because I'm more about how to entertain, basically, right? Because I have a conference, and my conference looks like, if you haven't been to Rise, it looks like this. This is the pitch finals, where we have 20 judges and 10 startups pitching in front of thousands of people in the audience. It's more like a show, there's like, they got to do it fast. They have to ask questions. I find like a startup would have many different kinds of pitch decks. There's one for like this, because it's got to be a certain amount of time. Then there's one that, you'd sit down with like an investor, and Edith has 30 minutes with you where you go over the initial slides, and then she'll ask you questions. There's meetings like that. But I think today we're going to talk more about this kind of meeting, where it is a one-on-one meeting. This is what we do at the conferences. We have an investor lounge where they'll sit down and they'll tell us, we're looking for seed stage startups in edutech or fintech, and and any country is good, bring them in. And so we just set up 30-minute meetings and just rotate them like a speed dating kind of thing. And so you have such a limited amount of time to get it through. I thought it'd be great to have an idea from our panelists, like what are you guys looking at mostly when you look at a deck? And also, this is a good thing for people who want to get into startup investing. Another major thing is like, a bunch of the unicorn startups in Hong Kong started off looking for $500,000, right? And now they're like billion-dollar companies. So, and of course, we know DoorDash, one of the founders, is from Hong Kong. Anyway, as we know, Airbnb came to do one of our very first events in Hong Kong almost 10 years ago, and he was like the third panelist on a startup panel. Like now he can headline the whole thing, which is just incredible. Now I got this. There's 5 usual slides in a deck. There's many online examples. It can be 10, it can be 15. There's different key points. I'm going to stick to these beginning 5 and kind of show some examples. I want to hear some of your thoughts about them. And then together, we're going to make our own perfect ultimate pitch deck based off of what you guys always see and hear and what the best slides are. So the ones that we like so far, we need a problem slide. We need a solution slide, a solution to that problem. We need to see traction. We need to see the team. And we need to see the future. And the future could be just the money they're raising for a runway, for how much money they need to get to the next level, or even like what the big business plan might be in the future and how it scales out to be a big business. Okay, so I thought that this was an interesting slide deck to look at. It is the problem solution slide for Airbnb. I don't know if it's the first one or the second one, but it's an early one. Yeah, the slide doesn't look super great as compared to like today, but the idea is looking at it now. Roland, if you were to be seeing this today, what would be some of the things that you would look at? Actually, I probably shouldn't have mentioned what company it was. It's just the best idea is just kind of look at it and then make your little decisions live in front of everybody. Like the problem, when you see the problem of being priced hotels and no easy way exists, like what do you think when you see this and then you see the solution to this? Like what are some of the things that come to your mind?
Well, it's always the why. Why does a problem exist? So looking at this, it's and even if I don't know what the company is, these types of slides where they talk about very objectifiable things like location or where something is, or the price of something, it's about the information layer. And so, whether it's and the information layer needs to apply specifically to certain verticals. So in this case, it's very obvious it's to do with hotels of sorts. And so the first question I'll ask is, well, why does this information not exist? Who currently has this info? And how do you put it together? And that will be the obvious question right now, as opposed to then jumping onto all these like fancy solutions. The core thing here is the information dissemination. So with that assumption and how this thing smells, looking at a solution where it's a web platform, an aggregator of sorts. Platforms suggest that we're just going to dump things in and then later figure it out. I don't care so much whether it's it saves money or makes money or culture, because I don't know whether those are real as for now. But I do see the value of this aggregation via platform. So so far I'd score this a good 6, 7 out of 10. I'd say, all right, this is telling me something. I'm not completely put off by this. So that would be the initial impression.
Perfect. That's what we're looking for. Great. Pieter, if I drop this in front of you, what are you seeing? What's popping out or what's not exciting for you?
Well, I start by reading the problem, and I have to read it a few times to understand what we're talking about. So I would sort of condense it and make it a bit more visual, almost the problem. It's too wordy, and I have to read it a few times to understand what the problem really is, and that would set me in the wrong direction. So simplifying the problem, and I think I agree, is of course the most important slide, the problem slide, but it could be a bit simpler here. And then the solution slide, a web platform, okay. If you cannot really describe it very well, I would make it a bit more visual. Maybe a screenshot or something like that. And what they're doing, the solution here, they're going into a slide that I always really like. That's the slide of the benefits or the competitive advantages. So they're saying this is the solution, but these are the benefits. So they're putting too much information into it almost. The sequence that I like to is problem, solution, maybe a case study, and then move to the benefits.
Good. Edith?
I think like with this, obviously Airbnb is very successful. But having said that, I would actually I love like quantitative numbers. So for the problem, particularly if they can actually quantify, what are we talking about? Like in terms of number of travelers, what are we talking about? Like in terms of why hotel make you disconnect? Like, can you quantify this? So that's that. And then on the solution, of course, this is like at least 10 plus years old. So this is old, but what they really built is a two-sided marketplace. A web platform means a lot of different things. It could be just a website or whatnot. But what they're really doing is two-sided marketplace. This is not just like an Expedia or a Travelocity. This is actually the supply side, which is the people who. So they need to sort of explain that what it is, because if they say that, immediately my KPI is my head will go a different way, because like the way that they make money is actually taking commission and whatnot. The conversation will go really differently. So this solution is not very clear on that particularly. So I will clarify that.
I think that's a good point. And I think it goes back to the founder as well, right? Like you all said, founder is very important. Exactly. This exactly looks like Expedia or Travelocity. It doesn't look like anything special. But those guys must have seen that the inflection point where they had to become a two-sided marketplace to make it go to the next level. Whereas those other companies didn't see that, or whoever was. I know those are not like startups. Right? I think they're part of like Microsoft or whatever. So they're not looking at those kind of things. But Brian and the co-founder are like very much looking at these opportunities and living in it. So it's quite amazing. And I have to say, honestly, if this guy came to me and said, I'm going to rent out your spare room in your house, I still, at that point, I don't care what it looks like. It just seems outrageous at that time. Now it just seems like so normal. Isn't that crazy? Less than 10 years. Okay, let's look at the traction page. Edith said this is the big one for her, so we'll stick with this. This is Buffer. Buffer, I didn't just arbitrarily chose them, but the guys were there in Hong Kong at the early stage. But this is an obviously very early slide. They had 800 paying users. Doesn't seem like a lot. $150,000 annual revenue, not a lot. But that's the third point is the magic one, right? The margins and the growing percentage, right? These are the good. So talk a little bit about, obviously this is so Edith, since you mentioned this is the most important slide, talk about why is it and what are you looking for in here before you put $1 into this company?
Yeah, so the number one thing I look for, especially they're actually quite clear about their paying customer versus their user. So I'm immediately in my head, I'm doing like the conversion rate from free to pay is less than 1%. So that's actually quite low. So that point they need to improve. One. Second is what I wanted to know actually is this growth month over month. How long did it take them to get to the 50,000 users? So if they are able to say within 3 months we're able to get 55,000 users, oh my God, I definitely want to talk to you. But if you're talking about it took us 10 years to get to 800 paying, then I'm like, I don't know about that. So I think if they can they clarify like their time span, that duration to get to this point.
Yeah.
And which
it's a good tease to get you to have a second meeting with them, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good. They're very, very clear about all these things. They focus on the right thing. The only thing that's missing for me, at least, is like how long did it take you to achieve this?
Okay, Roland, what do you think of this?
Yeah, the 97% margin really disturbs me a lot. I actually look at this and say, is this true or not? Because the two questions I'll ask myself is, if you're growing at 40% compounded month on month, 97% margin, even if your revenue per user isn't that great, maybe 100 something bucks based on this, dollars based on this, the question will be, why are you fundraising and what exactly are you applying it for? So that's the one way of looking at this. You seem to, if it really is 97%, even if it's not net but gross margins, you can grow quite nicely organically based on this. So I would really press on the fundraising, use of proceeds, questioning. And then the second thing I'd ask, and this is quite peculiar because I get that founders want to demonstrate like, look, hey, we've got margins and therefore our cost of goods, cost of producing the service is quite low versus our sale price. Then and obviously the market is accepting this price for their product because there is growth. Investors have asked me the question about, hold on then. So if you're telling me I can say put up X amount of capital, which represents say the 3% cost of goods here, and I also run this thing, for 3 months or 6 months or however long it took for these guys to get to this traction, then the question is, well, what's stopping anyone else from doing this? I mean, high margin stuff like that with low cost seems to be quite, obviously superficially, but it seems to be quite easy to replicate. And so you kind of have the positive side of this, which is great margins and great growth, but the margins are too high and therefore suggest this is too easy of a business. So you've got a bit of those assumptions coming in, and that's the kind of lens I'm using to look at this. It's anchored in this 97%. It's a bit weird.
Interesting. Pieter, are you there? Yeah.
Yeah, I am.
So traction, showcasing these numbers, even if it's a low amount of paying users, but they're showing a great growth rate, things like that. Are these attractive numbers to you at an early stage?
Yeah, because I see lots of companies who have way less. So this is interesting. Of course, and I agree with what was said earlier. We need a bit more context for these numbers, like where was the company coming from, what the conversion rates, etc., etc. But this is, there's validation. It's a very low number, but people are using it. You're solving a problem for some people. So this is interesting. This is what I like to see. And, this is indeed a point to have a further discussion with Buffer and to see how they can continue to grow.
Great. Yeah, I think that's I think the perfect reaction to this traction slide is another meeting and learning more. Okay, and then as we're going to look at this one, this is the team slide. So this startup shows that their CEO, co-founders graduated out of a great universities, also a name brand recognizable accelerator. Their first staff on the team come from other SaaS platforms, and then they're tapping into the French ecosystem for engineers. This is Front. And it's an email software, collaborative software tool, which is very, very interesting. So what do you think, Roland, about this? Is this a good team slide? Is this enough for you to go, oh, interesting, I think they can execute on this? Yeah, I don't know if you know what Front is. Let me know if you need more background on that, but that's kind of like, or what's missing, or what would make you more excited about the team?
Actually, I was just gonna, before you mentioned that this is a collaborative type of software, I was exactly going to say this is likely a collaborative storage cloud sort of a company based on the logos and team. So very obvious. So Dropbox being a YCOM alumni and then going to the YCOM school suggests to me that if they're doing something in the collaborative cloud space, whether it's work sharing files or emails or whatnot, the fact that they may have learned from the YCOM formula about how this works, that accelerator seems to have the experience in doing this, and the fact that your sales and customers who are and customer success, who are the ones that bring in the revenues initially, are from the same industry, Box and Dropbox. That to me suggests this is interesting. It's a good looking team slide. I don't like the unfair access to pool of excellent French engineers because I don't know who those 6 pictures are. Maybe if I were to be very critical, I would reduce the CEO and CTO's heads if they really want to showcase, being that this might be a tech-heavy kind of business. You are working in cloud infrastructure. So maybe you want to bring up those 6 pictures and identify them so we know that beyond your great leadership here, you do have the guys actually going to do the work. But overall, I think this is a strong team slide for the category.
Great. Pieter, what do you think of this slide? Is there anything missing from here that would make you more interested?
Well, no, I think it's a good looking team slide. I like it. The one question that I have though is, there's these 6 pictures in the bottom right of people. and I don't know who they are. So I'm not sure that's an effective.
They have no
use.
names and no titles. They're just
You
stock
know,
photo heads.
It raises a question, like, maybe if you should have used that a bit better. So that's a question mark for me. One thing I say about using brand names, I see that a lot as well. Like, what were you doing there, right? What sort of role did you have there, and how long were you at Dropbox? How long were you doing something at Y? So that is important to have a bit more context. But overall, this is a good slide, I would say.
Okay, great, Edith.
So usually I suggest all my founders to, the minute I see this deck, and I'm doing it already, is I go on LinkedIn and I look at the founders and I want to see what they have done.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's interesting. I think they decided to show the work experience for the team, but not the work experience for the founder. And maybe I'm also critical because, I mean, obviously I came from 500. Having a YC logo to me, I'm like, okay, but there's like thousands of others. So that doesn't do that much for me. But rather than that, okay, they went through a program. So in some sense, my suggestion for all founders is whatever you decide to show for your team and yourself, I do it. I love to like Google the heck out of your name. And if anything that doesn't add up, I just completely like suspicious.
Fantastic. That's great advice.
And then also, like, sometimes I get it. Like, you want to show the fact that, oh, my team is so great. But then when I start looking at it, when I Google your team, and I realize that guy is part-time and that guy is still like in their previous job, that is no good. So you got to be careful with that too.
That is interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, as an investor, I would definitely Google everybody on this team sheet, every advisor, and I Google their news if there was any news about them nowadays, right? Because it seems like everybody's involved in something. So it's good to see that, and it's very accessible. So no matter what you do here, you need to back it up with a Google search as well. And every investor should definitely Google all these people. Maybe that's why they left the names off the French engineers, because they've got a nasty backstory they don't want them to be known about, but we know that they exist. That's hilarious. Okay, great. That's great. Okay, and the last kind of slide, this is the future slide, or I guess the ask slide. And I find a lot of startups don't even put this on there. So that's why I want to make sure that people understand this is a very important part when you're talking to an investor, because an investor can immediately see the scale of your company. Are you looking for 500,000 angel round or 600,000 convertible note? We can use this as a sample. This was what Airbnb was looking for at the beginning. And this is Intercom's original slide deck. So maybe talk a little bit about what you expect to see as an investor on this slide. Like, if I put $3 million in there, are you guys like, whoa, this guy's asking for too much? And how many, like what's a turn off and a turn off on this kind of slides? Pieter, let's start with you.
I think this is a pretty deep slide. What I normally see is two types of slides. First, you have sort of the milestone slide. Sort of, this is the plan for the next few months, or the next few years. And then the second slide is the financial, and we're going to need like 2 million for this. And then you get to the financial slide, where I expect to see sort of the valuation of the business, the instrument, is it the convertible, is it the safe, is it the preferred deal, what you're using it for, which is what they're doing here. And then a lot of companies increasingly here start to show sort of, because it's a finance slide, what potential exit routes. They put a few logos like, and if we raise it, we've hit these milestones, and these are exit opportunities. But it's I think it highlights for me what it is. It's convertible notes. This is how much we need. This is where we're going, where it will take us. So yeah, it's pretty decent. It's not. I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10. I'd give it a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Okay, great. Edith, what do you think? Do you like to see this kind of a financial ask at the end, or would you rather just see what we're looking to do in the future?
I like this slide. Particularly what I like about this one is they're very clear on 12 months and 80,000 transaction. Because what I do see a lot sometimes is I'm gonna raise it, and this is like my laundry list of all these things that I'm going to do, rather than this is my goal. So I like the fact that they're showing this is my goal. I'm going to use this money to get to go. Honestly, it's not that I don't care. I do care, but I don't want a nitty-gritty detail of you're going to spend $250,000 to hire 5 engineers. I'm like, that's fine, but what are you going to do? So I do like that a lot.
Great, Roland, is this a slide that you like to see in the deck, and does it give you more perspective of where the company's at?
I like to see it, but it doesn't really give me a perspective as to where the company is at now. But I think similar to what Peter and Edith is saying is it suggests to you how much time they have to get to the next milestone, which in the early stage is probably the more important part, both in having the ability to finance as well as having more time to show that traction. So I actually look at this site and I work backwards from it. So oftentimes when you do like an early stage round, the question is always, well, what's next? When's the next round? When's the next equity financing? So on and so forth. And you kind of work backwards from that kind of milestone. And the question we ask ourselves is, is what you're suggesting here enough to get to whatever your target goal is? And then that helps us quantify a bit more the assumptions that we need to make to get there. And the perspective about asking that question from the investors is, of course, if you're saying you can do, you raise this much and you can do whatever you're going to do and get the traction and get a certain valuation, none of us want the dilution to happen anytime in between. And so the investor specific mindset of looking at this is, you have to be realistic both from your operations and your team morale point of view, but it's also a big dilution question from the investor point of view. We don't want to necessarily see bridge rounds and all sorts of kind of convertibles and loans in between. Maybe as a preference for us is, look, if you're going to go out there with a plan, because you've got initial traction, you kind of know what you're doing, then be serious about the plan, stick with it, and go for a proper fundraise, and don't waste time and dilutive capital in between just because you didn't do the early planning in this slide.
Good points. Okay, great. Okay, so now we're going to put together the ultimate pitch deck based off of everybody's favorite slides and missing slides. So those 5 slides, if we've gone through the problem, solution, traction, team in the future. Edith, let's start with you. What are some, it could be 1, 2, whatever you want to tell me, like the slides that you want to be in this ultimate pitch deck? What's missing?
Wait, so this one, if you can clarify this, like what I want to see in terms of problem?
What are the other slides? If there was another 5 slides available, what are those other slides that you think should be in the deck alongside these 5 slides?
Oh, got it. Definitely traction.
Okay, well, yeah, it's there already. So what's another one?
If I want to see the product,
Yep.
and it may lead to a demo, but at least some basic screenshot of how the product work.
Yep, great.
And then second, like, because I do look at a lot of sort of enterprise related things and a lot of developers tool, I actually like seeing like some sort of drawing of an architecture diagram,
Okay.
sort of like the secret sauce behind like what you're actually building.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And then size of the market. The market is actually huge for me. Not just like sort of a screenshot from Gartner. Oh, this is like $5 billion whatsoever. But how do you actually, see this market and dissect this? And then customers, like who are your customer? Who are your customer in terms of who decide to buy? A particular enterprise, who decide to buy and who actually using it? Sometimes it's completely different people.
Yep. Great. Perfect. Excellent. What are some of the extra ones on top of that? Can be the same ones if you want, but trying to keep them new ones that you might think these are awesome for you. Oh, Peter, maybe you've frozen.
Peter is so excited.
Yeah, he's definitely frozen. Okay, Roland, let's go to you first.
Yeah. Actually, I just realized something. With this whole pitching on Zoom and all that, the one thing I've seen recently, which I found very attractive, is add a video slide. Because at the end of the day, it's all virtual. So use video to your advantage. Have the founder, do the, hey, welcome to my pitch deck, whatever it may be. Use video.
Okay.
The benefit of on Zoom is whether you're demoing your product or whatnot, that interaction makes it a higher fidelity. Makes the whole deck feel a lot more real.
Yep. Anything else?
No, I think what we have between Edith and what you have there, that's pretty solid for a first deck.
That's enough slides to look at for one pitch anyways, right?
Yeah.
One of them I like, and what do you think? I know you said customers, but and market size, but I also think of competitive analysis. Sometimes I like to see who else is in the same market that you're in. Do you like that one?
Big time.
Okay. So Edith, I'll put it under yours.
And then also, you see that all the time. Usually, like the quadrant of
Yeah
is over there. I'm always on the top right. That is a standard slide. But it's good to at least like you know who else is competing with you. Big time.
Peter, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. What are some other slides that we're missing from this ultimate pitch deck?
Well, I'd like to see a timeline. I like to see the milestones. I like to see sort of very visual. This is what we've done. This is where we've come from. This is where we are today. This is where we're going. I think that's a very important one. The other one that I would mention, it's similar to Edith was saying, product demo. We yesterday actually had a company that was going after a specific industry and had a piece of software for it, and they kept on talking and talking, and it was nowhere clear, what the solution was. So come up with a case study, lift out one client. So not just maybe a demo, but do a case study. We had this one client, and in this case, we're saving this one client like $30,000 a month with their solution. So, and everyone in the room was like, or on Zoom was like, yeah, now we get it. Now we know what you're solving for your client. And I think that is key.
How important is there a slide like the story slide? How this idea came to be before I get into the problem. Maybe it's at the beginning, maybe it's at the end. Is that important, do you think?
It is. I think it's important at the intro. So usually the person says like, hello, my name is such and such. My background is in this. I've been working on this and this. Then I met my co-founder and we came up with this idea and we're going to talk to you now. It can be very short, but we call it setting the stage. You set the stage.
Yeah. But finally, we have one thing that we may argue about where I like personal story, but sometimes love to talk about themselves.
I know where you're going with this. Yep.
Oh my God. Like, I have gone on pitches where we have half an hour, they know it. We spent 20 minutes talking about their life story. Actually, there's not talking. It was just a one-way monologue.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
So I love the life story, but just keep it short and sweet.
Short.
Yeah. Totally. Again, that's another thing that I think the startup has to know, that investors are doing this all day. This is not their one meeting of the day they're doing with you. They're sitting in the clubhouse the whole day waiting for your phone call, right? This is another thing I always think about, and getting directly to the point. And basically, and also I guess one other thing I want to touch upon too when we talk about founders is, passion of course is very important. What other elements do you kind of like relate to? Do you think helps out doing these pitches, or does it come into account? I mean, it's basically people are going to execute this business plan to the perfection, and it is dating as again, so they have to be personable, and you have to want to get along with them because you're going to be seeing them quite a bit at all the board meetings and things. But is there any other kind of personal things you think that you get that you enjoy to see from these kind of meetings, Roland? Like, is there anything like Hong Kong founders come up to you right away and you're like, yeah, this is something, a trait that I like to see in a person when they present?
Yeah, actually, the one thing to answer that question, and the one thing I would also add to this ultimate pitch deck thing is, beyond customers, I'd like to hear the founder describe the customer acquisition process, the sales process, regardless of whether it's a 2C, so direct to consumer business, or 2B. Because it's, if you think about the whole story, and I do like the whole story, long or short of it, but to really put that story and put the founder's feet to the fire, when they start actually talking about the business, which ultimately you have to convince someone to pay you to go do something, or convince your teammates to go out there and sell something, having them talk about that and the way they describe it or the way they handle that situation, I think reinforces more of the diligence about who this founder really is, the style and language and approach they choose to take to acquire customers.
Great. Pieter, how do you get to, what is something that you like to have a founder come across like, just in the personal way?
Yeah, I get that question all the time, and it's very hard. You get it. Let me describe it to you this way. I once had a pitch with a guy who came up with a solution, and it was underwhelming. No one in the room reacted, but there was something about him that sort of the way he talked about it and his intent. It's like you're onto something. That guy now had two very successful exits, and I started working with him, and I became a shareholder. But it is something. It's very hard to encapsulate that in a few minutes, Casey, to say that. But when you see when you work closely with people, you get a feeling when someone has that sort of, whether he's coachable, likable, you get a feeling for someone, and it's very hard to put it in a few words. So
No, that's good.
it's a bit of a gut feel almost.
Yeah. No, I asked that question because I think it's also some sort of investment things about it. Are they looking at, because sometimes you look at it more analytical, looking at the deck and looking at the numbers. It's not really looking at the person, right? But it's also important to know that that's also part of the play of the whole deck. Edith, what do you think about that? You've seen so many live and on calls with the entrepreneurs. Like, which ones pop out to you? What kind of personality traits pop out to you?
Well, so because I do invest in a lot of developers tools, so sometimes like there are amazing founders that are introvert.
Yes.
You really need to pull that out of them. But in general, like, because over Zoom is tough, right? You don't. I love one of our friends, advisor for our fund, Bill Janeway. He's previously with Walker Pincus. He said, if you cannot smell the sweat of somebody, you don't really get to feel the energy. So we can't smell anything right now. I can't smell Casey or Pieter and Roland. And so you really need to kind of come across with the energy, like over Zoom, where you are really excited and passionate about this. And you really almost like you need to pump yourself up, look yourself in the mirror before you get on the investor call, so that they know like you're really into building this company. I gravitate toward that, although I give a lot of, I guess, I get it, like a lot of developers that we work with, they're super shy, they don't like to talk. So sometimes like I give them hall pass on that too.
Yeah, as long as they park the car, it's okay. Right. Okay. You probably didn't hear that because you love that joke, I'm sure. Okay. Last slide here. Okay. So I'm a new angel investor. I've got the deck that I know I'm looking for. I know I'm looking for the right kind of founder. Where do I find these startups now I want to invest in? Do I join an angel syndicate? Do I go to a conference? Okay. So here's some of the ideas. Of course, I have my conference, Collision from Home, in April. You can meet all the startups online on the camera all day long over 3 days. Pieter, you have Angel Forum. Can anybody join this, or how do you get people involved in that? Are you looking for members or not?
Yeah, we're always looking for members. It's only a few $100 a year, and you got to be an accredited investor, which is one of the security regulations here in Canada. So you can join, and we have lots of deals. But there's lots of other sources to find deals, right? Talk to your lawyers. Talk to one of the eminent lawyers, right? I have a deep network after 20 years doing this sort of work. So there's lots of other opportunities that coming out of the well-developed network. A lot of this stuff is done informally, right? So we sometimes miss a deal, right? We don't get to see all the deals. So lawyers look at what's happening at universities, what's coming out of universities and is being commercialized. So it's a lot of networking that you have to do to get access to the better deals. And we like to think we have good deals, but in parallel, you should also look around and see what's happening in your area.
Did you fly around a lot to look for deals back in the day, back in the old days?
Well, yes. Actually, I was in Israel in February last year, so that was one of my last trips. And then I was in Netherlands in mid-March when the whole thing happened. So this is when I did my first real Zoom meetings. I was there to meet people in person, and it went to Zoom. So my answer is yes. I focus on Israel increasingly and Europe, and I hope to get to be traveling again soon because I really enjoy it and I really love meeting people in person. So
great. Roland, as a part of Cocoon, Cocoon's been doing pitch nights forever now. That's a great place for Hong Kong startups to come and talk a little bit about that, and also where else do you go looking for deal flow?
So on Cocoon Pitch, it's moved online. It's Cocoon Pitch on Zoom now. So that's all teams everywhere. It's open invitation. So everyone can just log in and, entertainment, watch it, see what's going on. And then beyond that, if you want to get a bit more serious, then you start probably engaging funds, engage incubators. But before all that, the comment I want to make is what's probably more helpful, especially in the, in the beginning stages of an angel investor, is really ask yourself what areas of interest, not just broad stroke technologies or early stage, but are there particular areas that you may like in particular for whatever reason, and use that as a yardstick to look for look for places that can source this kind of deals. Because nowadays, these kind of platforms and programs are also getting a bit more well defined or specific. So that also might be a more efficient way if you know the category that you're looking for.
Great. And Edith, I know you have, well, when you're in Hong Kong, there's a Founders HK, but you've been doing it online as well. That's more to help the founders who want to like find opportunities from Hong Kong into the Bay Area. But how else do you get deal flow nowadays? Do you just take meetings? People just reach out to RaceCapital on the website? I know you come to our conferences. Like, how else do you recommend, or like early stage seed investors taking a look at getting to deals?
Yeah, so really quick on Founders Hong Kong, the goal of Founders Hong Kong actually connecting sort of international investor with Hong Kong founders. So it's all about Silicon Valley and Hong Kong. So that's sort of our goal. We have tons of like mentors, events, all virtual actually these days. But I think for your audience, I'm sure every single one of you as an investor have a lot of great know-how and operation background or your own industry experience from before. Sometimes I think for investors also need to build like our own brand and reputation. And a lot of times, like if you have a very particular goals, let's say I love, I don't know, food delivery app. Then if you are really into that, then I think doing certain research, understanding like who are some of these players, you can actually, most of the folks who are experienced, you can find them on LinkedIn and online. And really sort of build out your own research and understanding of a particular ecosystem where all the talents are. Who are some of these people that you should track? It could be from work network, or it could be school network. We do a lot of like proactively outreach to Stanford and Berkeley just because we're very close to it. So I think kind of think through your own circle of influence and sort of your focus. What kind of investor do you want to be? Are you going to be like the hands-on folks where you really want to drill down and make a reputation of your brand out of it? Or do you want to be just more, there's tons of really interesting syndicate happening on angel lists right now where, our lead investor and say, put $20,000 in and follow certain people and build it up that way. So it really depends on what kind of investor you end up wanting to be to determine how much work you want to put into it.
That's great. Excellent. Okay. We're better wrap it up there. I'm going to offer this slide deck to anybody who wants it. Just send me an email and I will send that slide deck out to you with contacts to the three panelists. And just a quick note, if everybody doesn't know yet, Rise is now going to move to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2022. Again, thank you very much, Edith, Roland, Pieter. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll see you at the networking session soon.